I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
We are Velocities in Music. On this podcast, Tom and I discuss a kegger of topics pertaining to modern music, including artist deep dives and monthly new music wrap-ups. Like the one we're going to do today, Tom.
That's what we're here for.
That's what we're here.
Mm-hmm.
It's May. Well, it was May. Today's actually June 1st.
It is.
But May, a lot of albums came out.
Oh, man. It was overwhelming.
There were several Fridays in May.
Yes.
Several, and
yes.
They were all full of new album releases.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get started, you can help support Velocities in Music. Subscribe to Velocities in Music on your favorite podcasting device to automatically get our latest podcast episode sent to your device each week. You can also visit www.velocitiesinmusic.com and just look at the podcast feed.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've actually been fixing up the website. It's
yeah,
been a lot of fun.
It's awesome.
I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, full credit to Jake on that. This guy had nothing to do with it.
Well, the problem is that I'm often lazy and neglect our website. But we've kind of been reformatting velocitiesinmusic.com to be just entirely podcast focused and not focused on the video album reviews of years past. I mean, you can still find most of them on YouTube if you just do a search if you're interested in an album that we did. But we've taken most of that content off of our actual website.
Yes.
Also, as well, Velocities in Music does not want your money. We don't want to introduce ads into the podcast just yet. Right now, all we want is for you to share Velocities in Music with family or friends whom you feel would benefit in joining in on the music discussion Tom and I try to create in our podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
And we're doing this month we're doing 4 podcasts, so it would average out to like 1 a week. Yeah. That's not going to be the MO going forward, though.
No, probably not.
I mean, our podcasts have been getting longer. The more that we do, the more that we talk. I think we just like hearing ourselves talk.
I know,
into
man.
the microphones.
We just got done doing 3 podcasts about Radiohead.
I mean,
that's a lot. They were all like over an hour.
It was self-indulgent.
It was.
I really think we define self-indulgent. But you know, we've kind of reached this conclusion. The more podcasts that we record, the more Tom and I just want to do a good job. And I think that we're kind of learning what that means as we become better, arguably or allegedly better at being the podcast personalities that you guys hear every day, which is really us. I mean, the podcast really suits what Tom and I wanted originally for Velocities in Music, which is to facilitate a discussion about talking about music, which is what we did.
Way closer to the original idea.
It really is. It really is. And I think that just the way that you and I work, Tom, we can't do a podcast in a half hour. We can't cover. Tom and I have a list of like almost 50 albums that came out in May. We're not going to cover all of them. We're going to narrow it down to about 35 and discuss those today with you guys. But the thing is that even those 35 albums, you know, we've cut a lot out and we still can't fit that into a half hour.
Yeah.
So in general, our podcasts are going to be a bit longer, and that typically means you're only going to get maybe 2 to 3 podcasts a month from Velocities in Music on average. So there'll be some months where there's more. There might be some months where you only get 2.
I mean, you know, Radiohead might release another album next month.
Oh, man. And then we have to do another 4.
Yeah.
You know, at least 4 podcasts.
We have to go back through their entire discography in the context of this new album.
Quad podcast. Yeah.
Quadcast?
Quadcast. So, May 2016.
Yes.
A lot of albums came out. You know, Radiohead dropped a new LP. So we'll get this one out of the way. We did a 3-part set. If you haven't heard it and you're big Radiohead fans, Tom and I would love it if you went and listened to whatever parts that you would like to of that. Part 1 was Pablo Honey through OK Computer. Part 2 was Kid A through The King of Limbs, and Part 3 was an entire hour structured around our first initial reactions, our initial conversation about A Moon-Shaped Pool.
Yep.
We would love for you guys to give us feedback on that if you haven't listened to that podcast already. Like I said, Part 3, an hour on Radiohead's album that dropped on May 8th, A Moon-Shaped Pool. Needless to say, Tom and I love it. We talked about it for a whole hour. If you want our commentary on that, please go listen to that podcast.
Yeah, it's not going to be here.
Yes, yes. Outside of we love it, and you need to listen to it.
Yeah.
All right. Ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it, Tom.
We're going to kick off May 2016 with the new album from Death Grips, Bottomless Pit. After pulling a Brett Favre / Jay-Z and breaking up several years ago, Death Grips are still together and still one of the most prolific groups out there.
Wait, Death Grips joined the Vikings?
No.
Don't do it, Tom.
If MC Ride was the quarterback for the Vikings, I would love...
Poor Teddy Bridgewater.
I would love to... He just comes out, he's like...
He could probably throw the ball farther.
They came to blow
Football
your system.
fans will think that's funny.
Okay. which is why it went over my head. Jake is speaking to an ignorant audience here, so hopefully all of you listening actually appreciated that. But Bottomless Pit, this to me is probably the most fun album they put out since The Money Store. The arrangements still feel as abrasive and confrontational as ever, but it's produced to be much smoother, unlike what we got with the Powers That Be last year. So this makes it about as accessible as these guys are likely to get, but they're still not compromising that rebellious nature that makes them what they are. I was really pleased with Bottomless Pit.
Severe swerving, I toe lag off uncertainty to the zipper. Locks my southwest silhouette commence. Shot 60 shots a second on a hex. Block a strike between each time your solar flex.
Following Death Grips, we have James Blake with his third album, The Color in Anything. James Blake is an English electronic artist, singer-songwriter type. I like the infusion of both those genres because I think a lot of electronic artists nowadays just focus on sound, where James Blake is more than just the sound. It's certainly his sound is very crafted and it's all about the sound, but it's also he adds that singer-songwriter flair to it.
He's a crooner.
Yeah, he really is.
Through and through.
You know, we really liked his debut album, his self-titled debut album, which came out in 2011. I remember liking several of the tracks of that. That was on our favorite album list of the year. In 2013, he came out with his second record, Overgrown, and I think we liked that pretty well as well.
I really like that one.
So The Color in Anything, I gotta say, a little bit more challenging. It certainly sounds like a James Blake record. It's sultry R&B styled vocals over fat processed beats and subtle, muddy synth textures. His approach on The Color in Anything is similar to his previous records, focusing on this minimalistic presentation and his use of quirky vocal hooks and repeats to add a sense of intrigue to the music. I'm not really impressed with this album. I don't find the songwriting to be as interesting as either of his previous records. The beats are simpler than before, and Blake's vocals really just don't do as much for me.
I agree with all those points, but the thing that killed it even more for me is just the length.
Yeah.
At about 76 minutes, this feels unjustified. The thing that worked about his first two LPs is they were very dense, both sonically and emotionally. He really packed a wallop in them. But this is just a sound that I never feel like I need to listen to for more than 45 minutes or so at a time. It just dilutes itself. So that just really kind of ruined it for me.
It's the thorns I want and the bloom I always fear. Tell me when I have to go and then love me there. Tell me when I have to
Next up, we have the new album from Anohni Hopelessness. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. This is Anthony Hegarty, as you may know her from Anthony and the Johnsons, but she changes her name and goes to a synth sound. I think she pulls this off really well.
Yeah.
This has an incredible vocal presentation. Her voice fits the style even better than I would have expected. And I really like the biting, satirical lyrics that fill this album. They're very politically and socially charged. The music itself, I think it's all right, and that's about as far as I'm willing to go. I think it's better than a lot of the synth pop or dance pop that I hear out there, but I really feel like overall this is going to be remembered for its message and its stance and the power that's behind that, more so than necessarily the songwriting quality.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, Tom. To me, the electronic compositions had a tendency to feel a little too cheap and cliche, but it was clearly very intentional. It's just not my style, but I do think it was executed very well.
After all, I'm hardly too blind to drown about me. Blow me from mountains and into the sea.
All right, next up we have Paradise, the fourth album from Canadian punk rock band White Lung. Their album that came out a couple years ago, Tom, Deep Fantasy, 2014. I think it was one of our favorite albums of that year. It was a great record. This record, it's similar in style generally to Deep Fantasy, but not quite as hard-hitting. And it's a bit closer to radio-friendly rock. Still found it to be pretty good, but not nearly as good as Deep Fantasy.
Next up, we have Kaytranada, 99.9%.
Why do you think they stopped there? Why not 99.99%?
Why not just put a line over the 9 and imply that? It just keeps going on forever.
Yeah, right. That's
now
a
we're
good
getting
idea.
mathematical here. Anyway, this is sample-based kind of DJ music, electronica music. There are a lot of fun moments on this album. If it's something you can just kind of put on, get lost in, and enjoy. But there's not a whole lot of contrast or variety in the sound, which is why, to me, it makes for a better kind of mood music experience rather than something really detailed that you could pay attention to, at least for me. So this is decent, but kind of passable. I'm not really buying into the hype on this one.
Next up, we have the latest release from Chicago-based garage rock band Twin Peaks called Down in Heaven. Not to be confused with Zuzu's album from last month, or is it Shushu? Shushu.
Yeah.
Zuzu. I don't know why I've always called it Zuzu.
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 Okay.
Shushu's album, music from Twin Peaks, which we love. Probably
Amazing.
going to be in our top 10 this year. Just fantastic. Because we're both huge Twin Peaks fans. Not this garage rock band,
but the TV
show.
Yeah.
Just to make this really confusing. And I just, in general, like Twin Peaks. If you
What
get
about
my
the
drift.
restaurant?
I've never been there. Because did you actually know? So Hooters is big in Iowa because the founder of Hooters went to Iowa State.
Really?
Yes. Isn't that interesting trivia?
I did not know that.
I have no idea how this relates to Twin Peaks other than breasts. That's the only connection.
There you go. Well, that's the restaurant.
All right, so let's talk about music. That is actually what this podcast
All
is
right.
about.
It's not about boobs.
I mean, it can be, but
I'm
it's going to
sorry.
get real provocative real quick.
Okay.
So, like I said, garage rock, Down in Heaven, the album, is garage rock with a lot of influence from what I could hear from the Rolling Stones. Lots of moving bass lines, layers of distorted, underproduced guitars. The vocalist is clearly trying to imitate Mick Jagger. And this screams festival music to me. Great, probably sounds great live, but lacks the substance necessary to really make it a great album, and therefore I didn't love it.
Next up, we have the debut album from Luh. L-U-H.
La, la, la.
I don't know if you're supposed to pronounce it that way. There's a track on the album called Lost Under Heaven, so I'm just assuming that that's what that stands for.
Interesting.
I don't actually have anything to back that up. But this is a new project of Ellery James Roberts, who is the vocalist from the indie rock band Woo Life, which was also a crazy acronym. An album that Jake and I reviewed a number of years back that we weren't really all that big on, although it did have a few killer tracks. On this one, though, he's going a little more electronica. He's got his girlfriend, Ebony Horn, I believe is how it's pronounced, featuring on vocals on the album as well, with production by electronica artist and producer Haxon Cloak. So this is a really interesting kind of sound and outfit to me. There's something, though, about the execution of this. I like the ideas themselves. I like the songs, the melodies. Something about the execution of it, to me, comes off as very dramatic and kind of pretentious. I think it's mostly just Ellery's vocal style. To be honest, I'm just not a big fan of it. I think it's going to be one of those you love it or you hate it kind of things. It just, to me, it doesn't come off as authentic. It has that dramatic quality that I just feel like is a little bit over the top. And I feel like the female vocals don't necessarily balance that out. They just kind of support that same vibe, which I'm sure some people will love, but it really wasn't for me.
All right, next we have one of the more interesting albums to come out in the month of May. Julianna Barwick's third record, Will. Julianna Barwick. I'm not familiar with Julianna Barwick's music until listening to this record in preparation for this podcast. Wikipedia lists her genres as ambient or new age, which I kind of get, but I also kind of dispute as well. She has a very interesting style. Basically, Will to me reminded me a lot of early Braids. You had these repeating electronic synth melodies underneath Barwick's vocals, which are looped, layered, and soaked in reverb to create this ethereal, spacious atmosphere. Many of these songs are grounded out by piano, but most of the songs exist in this like dark minor key, which just had this like brooding mood to it. The purpose of Will, to me, seems to be to create this austere sonic space that provides a great introspective mood. Which is, I think, where the ambient comparison draws from. While I love the sound and production, this seems a little too functional to me to be a great record.
Next up, we have a collaborative album from Yoni Wolf and Serengeti hip-hop artists. And this is a hip-hop album from Yoni and Geti called Testarossa. This is experimental hip-hop. And when I say experimental, I mean it not as much like in a sonic sense, like Death Grips, which I talked about earlier, but more in terms of structure. These songs don't rely on hooks. They just kind of flow, which really fits the smooth vocal delivery that both of these artists have. This is a really fun and unique listen, but I don't feel like the uniqueness necessarily translates into depth or comeback quality. This is something I might, give another couple listens to just to kind of let it soak in. But overall, I while I enjoyed it, I wasn't blown away.
Let's get down. One day asleep till the next day awoke. I'm waiting for Yoni outside in a coat, smelling like coke, sipping on the smoke, talking to a young girl trying to steal hope.
All right, every month, Tom and I have to disagree on an album at some point. At least one per month. That's the rule, right, Tom? It's just a rule at this point.
Yeah.
And that's this album. Dan Michaelson and the Coastguards, Memory. I enjoyed this record. I think significantly more than you did, Tito. It's slow and lethargic, very folky rock music. The vocalist's voice is really the first thing you notice, and it most closely reminds me of the deep baritone of the National's Matt Berringer, but even more croaky than that. I'm talking so croaky you can hear damn near feel the texture added by his individual vocal cords vibrating as he sings. It legitimately adds a nice texture to the music, in my opinion, and the music needs it. The composition is made up of quiet, clean electric guitar over piano and subtle strings. These guys are really creating an atmosphere guided by subtle melodies and emotion of the unique vocals. I really like the balance that strikes. It's a little too lethargic for me to love it just on like first or second listen, but I can tell that this is very well done and is probably a grower that deserves more listens than what I've given it so far, to be honest with you. So I'm certainly going to come back to it.
So I liked these songs and I liked the style quite a bit. But the croakiness.
You couldn't get over it.
The croak factor, if you will, was a huge barrier to entry for me. It's the first
polarizing
thing you hear. Yeah. And what if I just went the rest of the podcast talking like this, vocal fry all over the place. Like a whole album of that. I just hear his vocal cords being destroyed.
In fairness, it's way better than what that just sounded like. I mean, we pretty much just tried to make our podcast sound terrible.
The guy's still a good singer, but I just I fixate on it, and I'm like, no, it really bothered me. Bothered me.
To me, it was that like signature sound that added so much texture and really opened up the sound for me.
That's fair. And when you go for something really unique and original,
you kind of got to go for it.
With that, I appreciate jumping into that kind of situation, with no abandon, just jumping into it. But naturally, as you mentioned, that's going to be a polarizing thing. It's a high risk, high reward situation, and I'm glad that this is getting the acclaim that it deserves because I think the writing here is great. But I just think there are going to be some suckers like me out there who just can't stand that aspect of it. That's just the way it's going to be.
Croak on, buddy.
Memory, you left me undone, and you showing what I don't want to see.
And now we are on David Bazan. I once again pronunciation
Bazan.
Anyway, David's new album is called Blanco. And stylistically, this reminds me of kind of a less energetic and less sardonic John Grant. It's heavy with the electronic elements, but I love the way that those are blended with other pieces of instrumentation, and then the vocals are mixed very well, very evenly with everything. It makes for a very smooth listening experience where the vocals aren't getting drowned out, but they're not just sitting right on top like it's some kind of radio pop mix. There's nothing phenomenal about this album to me, but I did find it to be consistently enjoyable and just very well arranged in general.
I would agree with all that. I applaud Blanco for its progressive songwriting, mainly in how the songs were structured. However, the lack of originality in the sound kind of bothers me. This sound is simply overdone in music right now. While Bazan brings his particular sound to life with just his general enthusiasm, I feel like it's just a hair better than the bevy of other artists already operating in this genre. Still, the melodies are catchy and the beats get my head moving. Overall, I'm a fan of this. All right, next up we have Mark Pritchard's Under the Sun. This is electronic ambient music, focusing on sustained atmospheres and moods. To me, it feels like it could be a soundtrack you hear for some educational video on life in the future, like something you'd hear.
Whoa.
Like, yeah. Like, whoa is right. Like, it's like something you'd hear at like the Henry Doorly Zoo IMAX, you know? Occasionally, guest artists provide vocals, Tom York among them, which obviously was my favorite track because I love everything Tom York touches. It's these tracks that are the clear highlights, and this is, while it's really interesting when he does this, its length also makes it really hard to absorb. So it's really hit and miss, just kind of a long record.
Next up is a new album from Fruit Bats, Absolute Loser. This is kind of folksy, acoustic music. Sounds to me like maybe a little bit of a poppier and less serene Fleet Foxes. This is really a pretty good and tactfully crafted album, but it doesn't really jump out at me with a lot of emotional appeal. I think this is one that you're going to put on and probably appreciate for its style, for some of the songwriting tactics and performances, but I, for one, found this difficult to connect with on any kind of deeper level than that.
But you should know you're not immune, kid. Please don't get me wrong, bad things might not happen to you.
Next up, we have a record called Beyond the Bloodhounds. Love that album title. From an artist I'm not familiar with until just recently when I listened to this record, Adia Victoria. Really like that name, too.
Yeah.
Wikipedia calls this gothic country music. Now, I had to look that up because I was having trouble describing it in my head, which is usually a good sign. If I can't describe what I'm hearing.
When an artist stumps you on genre,
when I can't
intriguing
go,
listen.
this kind of sounds like it has a tinge of post-rock and some post-punk. And yeah, when I can't do that, it's usually a good sign. To abstract this sound, to me, this is fundamentally, I think it's pop music, but it's infused with southern rock elements and Adia Victoria's unique vocal presentation and emphasis on unique. For some reason, I get an alt-J vibe when I listen to this, and I agree, Tom, with your notes here that it kind of sounds like Licky Lee.
Yeah, that's the vibe I got.
Yeah, the sound is fundamentally based in rock instrumentation. You hear a lot of southern-style guitars, fat bass, and spacious percussion. It's presented and structured like pop music with short track lengths, centered around very catchy, well-written vocal hooks. And that's where this sound really succeeds. Adia Victoria's vocals are downright addictive. While I think the sound is a little too reliant on her vocals, I would have liked to have heard more expansive instrumentation to pair with the vocals like she did on the track And Then You Will Die, which is one of my favorites on the album, And Then You Die. I'm hugely intrigued by this sound. It's pretty damn unique. This is easily one of the better albums that come out in the month of May.
Shouldn't be looking at me acting all surprised. Yeah, you ask me a question, I'll tell you a lie.
All right, we have next up a new album from Kikagaku Moyo. I don't know, man. I'm doing my best here with the pronunciation. Kikagaku.
It's like they're trying to mess with us.
Well, they're obviously not from Central Iowa, so that's
Otherwise it'd be called corn.
That is
soybeans.
That is a band, Jake. You know that Korn is a band.
In my head it had a C.
Oh yeah. Was it backwards? Okay. Tangent. We digress. The album is called House in the Tall Grass. To me, this is very psychedelic rock with kind of a blues classic rock, almost like even stoner rock. But I hesitate to say that because this, while it's a lot about atmosphere and mood, it's not necessarily a really dark album. It's actually got kind of an uplifting vibe to it. I love the serene and surreal quality of this music. It is an album that you can absolutely get lost in, but I found it to be of a consistently high quality. And there was enough variety in there while remaining consistent that I didn't really get bored. So this is definitely one I'd recommend. The next album is from somewhat of a super group called Hardworking Americans. The album's called Rest in Chaos. Now, I am going to call myself out on this. When I saw that what I was getting into with this listen was a kind of jam band, kind of blues rock supergroup featuring a member of Widespread Panic, which is a band I enjoy, but still, overall, that did not really get my hopes very high for this album. I expected it to be a little meandering and self-indulgent, especially when I saw that it's like an hour long. I didn't have a lot of high hopes, but this was significantly better than that expectation that I, for some reason, had in my head. There is some truly great and well-thought-out songwriting here. I still do think it is a tad long. They probably could have trimmed it back a little bit, but really what they're doing here with the style is fresh. They put a lot of interesting songwriting tactics in here, a lot of variety in the general approaches and instrumentation, a lot of varied song structures. I mean, I think that these guys are just doing a lot of things right. And while this might not be one of my favorite albums of the year, it's definitely one that I would recommend.
She thought it sounded good sober. She should have heard him with a buzz though. That's right. I'll tell you.
Next, we have a very interesting band release. The Canadian Montreal-based indie rock band Islands dropped 2 records on May 13th. 2 records, not a double album.
Yeah.
2 separate records. They're 6th and 7th studio records. Now, Islands is a band that, honestly, I've been listening to since their debut record came out in 2006, Return to Sea. I really like Return to Sea. Mm-hmm. That's easily my favorite of all their albums. Their second album, Arm's Way, came out in 2008 before Velocities in Music started. Right after Velocities in Music started, we covered their 2009 release, Vapors. We listened to A Sleep and A Forgetting in 2012 and Ski Mask in 2013. I've always been a fan of this band.
Yeah.
But their debut, Return to Sea, was really an album that lit me up. It just reminded me of like a very quirky kind of Modest Mouse Arcade Fire sort of mix of sound, but more indie and lo-fi than that. And it just hit. It was just perfect for where I was at in life at the time. Mm-hmm. So I'm really excited for these 2 new albums to drop. One is called Should I Remain Here at Sea? And that is the follow-up. It's considered a follow-up by the band to their debut album, Return to the Sea.
Makes sense.
And it's very much in a similar style. Now, the other record that they released on the same day this month was a record called Taste, which is a completely different sound because it's based in electronic music. So very different sounding records dropped on the same day. Very interesting how they did this. They actually recorded these albums last month, and then they were crowdfunded because this band has a pretty loyal following. So really, really just love the idea of how they're releasing these records. I think it shows there's a genuine artistry there. So first I'll talk about Should I Remain Here at Sea. First of all, this album is very short. It's 29 minutes long. It's definitely got a similar vibe to Return to the Sea. However, the mood is much more somber at times. There's lots of clean electric guitar, simple drum beats, a little bass, keys, and occasionally some piano, but it's a very stripped down sound. Islands have always relied on the vocals to provide a lot of the melody, and that's definitely true here, and it pairs very well with the quirky, provocative lyrics. This is a decent record, but nothing too incredible. I definitely didn't like it as much as Return to the Sea, just because it wasn't as expansive and aggressive, and just the scope of it seemed so much more restrained. And especially, it was only 29 minutes long, so it kind of did feel just like an extended EP.
I will fool around, or maybe they'll clean me out, and you can't stop me now. No, you can't stop me now.
Now, Taste, on the other hand, the electronic record of their dual day release of their 6th and 7th albums, it kind of feels more like the complete package, even though it's electronic music. And I'm not gonna lie, when bands go from like indie guitar bass to indie electronica, it typically doesn't go well. I actually really like this record. As in the electronic half of the Dual Islands release, I was curious as to what I was getting into when I put this on. They weren't lying. This is certainly much more electronic. You have a lot of drum machines, synth melodies, processed vocals, still the occasional clean electric guitar in true Islands fashion, but this is still pretty minimalistic and relies on the vocals, like all Islands records do, which really sound like they fit in this setting more naturally than on Should I Remain Here at Sea. I really like this sound. The only downside is it's really nothing original.
At home, no milk, no sugar. Oh, to be the cream.
And now we have some metal hailing from Norway. We have Kvelertak with their new album Nattesferd.
Good job.
I'm doing my best.
Good
here,
job.
man.
You're getting all the bad ones. Like a really hard one.
I really am.
Albums.
Why is that? Why is it lining up that way? We reviewed their another of their albums a few years back, and now we have Nattesferd. This is a great album to me. Great metal album. If you're into metal along the lines of like Baroness, now I would say that Kvelertak is even a little more metal in terms of the song structures, whereas Baroness certainly still has some choruses and things like that. I feel like Kvelertak expands their sound a little bit more, but in terms of production style, overall presentation, that's one close comparison that I would make. I just think these guys are great at making metal fun and uplifting without it sounding like cock rock that you would hear in 80s hair metal or on the radio today. I mean, it's upbeat, but it still kicks ass. I was really impressed with this one.
Next up, we have Modern Baseball's third album, Holy Ghost. Modern Baseball, these guys are a rock band from Philadelphia, but I would classify them more as towards the emo or pop punk sort of genre. This album, just got to get something out of the way. It's a really short record, but it's also really strong. For what Modern Baseball did, they just totally accomplished a lot in a short amount of time. Its upbeat, groggy rock songs are reminiscent of early Weezer. I really like the vocals and guitars that I heard on the record. I also like that they keep the songwriting fresh enough for this to be fun and interesting throughout the record. I wish it was longer. It just kind of felt like an EP.
And his face was flushed, still in my mind. The waiter asked if she was high.
Next, we have a new mixtape from Chance the Rapper called Coloring Book. Mixtape. It's an album. I don't care what anyone says, it's a freaking album. If it's on people's best of lists and we're bothering to talk about it here, I'm just going to call it an album, all right? Even though mixtape, I know, is some kind of subcategorization of album. So anyway, that's my soapbox moment for the evening here. Coloring Book. This is a record that's getting a lot of hype. A lot of people are loving Coloring Book. This thing is loaded with guest appearances from the likes of Kanye West, Lil Wayne, Justin Bieber, Future, like everyone seems to be on this album, and everyone seems to be loving it, except for me, apparently. I don't get it. I don't know where the love is coming from. This is a Mugatu moment for me. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. I don't know why people like this. I can tell that Chance the Rapper is really trying to do some interesting stuff with the structures and even just the layers. I appreciate that this is not just club beats. He's avoiding that. He's doing some cool things with the mix, with the instrumentation that he's including, but I don't think that there's much to say beyond that. The songs don't have any more depth just beyond this slightly unique approach to the instrumentation. The lyrics don't do anything for me. I found this album to be obnoxious and not rewarding at all. I don't know what's wrong with me, Jake. This is just one of those things.
I don't know either, man. I really like coloring books.
God damn it.
Shooters come for free, so if one more label try to stop me, it's gonna be some dreadhead niggas in your lobby. You don't want no problem with me. You don't want no problem with me.
Next up, we have Karl Blau's introducing Karl Blau. This is mellow alt country. That's how I would describe it. Karl Blau has a wonderful voice that's smooth and really full sounding. The vocal melodies, which are fairly decent throughout this record, sit on top of the instrumental composition, which usually consists of piano, acoustic guitar, some jazzy drums, and some light electric and steel guitar. There's nothing really flashy about this album. It's just solid songwriting and subdued presentation. If you're into quality alternative country or Americana music, this is an album you absolutely need to check out.
Days are just lonely days, and they don't bring nothing but pain. And in those times, I find it just don't pay to
Okay, next we're going to talk about an EP from the band Wolf Parade.
Wait, we're only doing album reviews.
God damn it.
Sorry, this is an album review month-end podcast.
Yeah, we're still going to talk about this.
Oh, right, because this is our podcast and Wolf Parade's one of my favorite bands.
It is.
Oh, we should.
And you're
we should talk about
super
this.
excited. That
I'm
they're
actually
doing shows again.
They're coming to Des Moines.
I know.
Coming to Des
It's
Moines.
gonna
Got a
be
new
great.
new
Yeah.
EP. I was devastated when they broke up
Yeah.
a few years ago, and now they're back.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the thing to do.
Yeah. So this EP4, which is also appropriate because it only has 4 tracks on it. And EPs are really hard to grade because they're not really trying to accomplish the same things that albums are. So you really just have to look at it in terms of direction and what the individual tracks do. And I do think that the songwriting here is really pretty good. Now, of course, it's not really strung together. It doesn't create an album experience. That's fine, but I like the direction they're going with the songwriting. But I gotta say, the production just killed this for me. It sounds weak and mid-rangey. There's no high-end sparkle, but there's also no thickness in the low end. It absolutely takes the life out of the tracks.
Their third record that came out in 2010, Expo 86, was exactly like that. And the songwriting, while the songwriting I thought on that record was fantastic, it was just plagued by production issues.
Yeah, similar here. Similar case here.
Daddy got a sampler and a saxophone. He made a 7-second loop and let it play while he painted pictures for 80 hours.
Next, we have Jessy Lanza's aptly titled "Oh No." This is what I think when I heard the sound of this, because it's synth-based pop music. Oh no. And that's really unfair. There's a lot of synth-based pop music out there, and most of it's, not spectacular. And I'm not gonna lie, this "Oh No" was not spectacular. Synth-based pop music, it has a lot of Prince and Michael Jackson influence. If you like either of those artists, this is definitely somebody you want to check out. It's most noticeable. Those influences are most noticeable in the production and overall sonic presentation. I found this to be very enjoyable. A lot of well-crafted pop tunes focusing on a nice blend of synth melody and catchy vocal hooks. It's not really, like I said, not my cup of tea, but I really appreciate when this style is done well, and I think this is okay.
We're moving on to Ariana Grande with her new album, Dangerous Woman. Anyone listening to this probably knows that this is not me and Jake's cup of tea. This is vocal-based radio pop music. But I gotta say, for being a vocal-based pop album, this is actually pretty good. The performances are good. There's a little bit of diversity and a lot of tact in the production. It's not terrible to listen to. For example, I'd take this over the album that Sia put out earlier this year any day. But still, I really just think there's so many better things to listen to out there. This certainly has some virtues, but not one I'm going to come back to.
Next up, we have the second record from Mutual Benefit. Mutual Benefit is a music project from singer-songwriter named Jordan Lee. We reviewed Mutual Benefit's first album, which came out in 2013, Love's Crushing Diamond, and I remember really enjoying that
great
record.
album.
Number of those tracks I still listen to this day. So his second record, Skip a Sinking Stone, just came out this month, and it really sounds like Mutual Benefit. It's that quiet, mellow sound, yet has a lot of undercurrents of tension conveyed by the tenuousness of the vocal melodies in the presentation and the melodic yet subtle string backings that he adds. This is a very organic sound, however, it's evident it's well crafted and produced to be such. I wish there was a little bit more liveliness to the songwriting. I felt like his previous record had that, where this one doesn't. At least somewhere once or twice on the album, if it was just a little bit more energetic. But the mood and the overall sound aesthetic are still very strong.
Things will ever go away when I can't seem to stay in place. Could it be love that makes us change? It's not for nothing.
Next is the new album from Seat Headrest titled Teens of Denial. This began as the solo project of Will Toledo, and he really gained a lot of notoriety from his very prolific recordings that he posted on Bandcamp, and now he's got a little bit more of a full-fledged band, and Teens of Denial is released. This is, to me, kind of a combination of early emo, slacker rock, and classic indie rock that has this very inherently charming quality. Now, this is one I know is getting a lot of hype, and I hate to be the naysayer here. I don't think this is a terrible album, but I'm not really buying into this. This, to me, is the sound of a bright young guy who's brimming with musical ideas, but has absolutely nothing of value to say. He's doing some cool stuff with dynamics and song structures, but despite that intellectual appeal, all of these decisions are almost too intellectually driven to the point where they feel like they were stumbled upon arbitrarily, like he's just throwing darts or something and deciding what each song's next step will be. I don't feel like there's any real thought going into it other than just whatever will sound cool next. So because of that, it's not bad by any means. It's kind of an interesting listen, but I was not sold on it.
Next, we have Marissa Nadler's latest release, Strangers. Marissa Nadler, she's an acoustic singer-songwriter and guitarist. We reviewed her 2011 record, Strangers. She had an album called July come out in 2014. Actually came out in February of 2014. I think her record company kind of messed up there. Real opportunity to just release that in July. Just completely missed that boat. We did not review that record. I think a lot of stuff was just coming out at the time, and we just never got to it, and then we quit reviewing albums that year. Anyways, excited to get back to Strangers because we liked her self-titled album, which came out in 2011. So Strangers, this is a denser, darker, and more complex sound for Marissa Nadler. Strangers is full of morose compositions that seem to haunt your mind as you digest them. You have these walls of atmospheric electric guitar, which wash out from the speakers over slowly strummed acoustic guitar and steady cadence drum beats. These waves of string fill in the gaps, adding to this spacious atmosphere. Nadler's vocals fit this style really well, relying on sustained notes and personal confessional lyrics to add the necessary emotional connection. I like this more than other Marissa Nadler albums I've heard. It's probably my favorite of hers, and I can tell that this is worth a few listens to dig into all of the sonic layers that I'm hearing. Still, it's a bit too slow and redundant as an album listening experience for me to really fall in love with it after one or two listens, but I'm certainly willing to give it a few more.
Next up is the album from Holy Fuck called Congrats.
Don't swear.
Holy Fuck. Interesting
man.
band name. we're not on the radio, but I still never understand why you would have a band name that you can't say on the radio. I don't know.
Just to be that rebellious, man.
Yeah, just they're too cool.
Just gotta kick against the system.
But really, Holy Fuck is a very good group. If you're a fan of Liars or Battles, I would say it's kind of in that vein where it's rock music. There are some vocals, but really the focus is on these droning, just kind of moody instrumental compositions where the beats really just entrance you. There's some synths laying on top of it. I would say that Holy Fuck is a little more upbeat and groove focused than Liars or Battles, but in a similar vein. This album is a lot of fun to listen to. The beats and the melodies are infectious, and the tracks convey a variety of moods while still sounding relatively cohesive. This is definitely one I'll come back to.
Next up, we have a release called The Party from Andy Schaaf, which reminds me of the Ween song off of La Cucaracha.
We had the best time at your party.
It's one of my favorite Ween songs.
I love it.
I love that song. Anyways, The Party really reminds me of Bell and Sebastian mixed with like indie bands like Phoenix and Rogue Wave. You have this twee 60s influence indie pop. The back half of this record gets a little bit more moodier than the front half. Most of these compositions consist of piano, a jazzy rhythm section, some horn backings, some light electric guitar, and potentially some production effects on some tracks. The male vocalist lays his vocal melodies over top of the instrumentation, and this entire composition seems to just have this lethargic drawl to it. I understand the appeal of the sound, and I really wanted to like it. I just couldn't find myself appreciating it. I wanted something that just accomplished more. I just felt like the scope was a little bit too limited on this record.
She's standing in the corner, staring at the floor. I wonder what the hell he did this time.
Next up is Pelvis's new album, R.I.P. This is, to me, kind of alternative rock with hints of classic emo. And I gotta say, Jake, we've been seeing a huge resurgence in this like classic emo sound.
Yeah, we really have.
Haven't we? And I gotta say, I actually love it. Because when it's done well, it's a genre that lends itself to really diverse songwriting and just no bullshit. And I think that Pelvis does that really well. They're a no bullshit kind of band. The songs here are good. This album accomplishes a lot in a short amount of time at just under 30 minutes. These guys own their sound and they mix up the songwriting structures quite well. I really enjoyed this one.
I hope that when I'm an elderly man, I have a no bullshit pelvis.
No bullshit pelvis?
Yeah.
Dude, that's if you're 80 years old and have a kicking pelvis, that's all you can ask for.
That's all you want in life,
that's
right?
all you can ask for.
Next up, we have the album 2 from a band called Mudcrutch. Mudcrutch is a deceiving name, and I put this on not really knowing what I was getting myself into because I noticed right away it sounded exactly like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Turns out, after doing a little bit of research, after being super intrigued, well, by jolly, it is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It really is. Well, it's not Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. It's the band that made Tom Petty really like kind of set the stage for his career. Tom Petty's original band before he became known and famous in the early 1970s was called Mudcrutch. He and a couple other guys formed this band and were playing shows. And then one of the guys left. He replaced the member who left. And they became Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And obviously Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers is one of just the greatest rock bands of all time. I'm a decent sized fan of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Well, anyways, after Tom Petty's huge, successful career, in the mid 2000s, he got his old original band members in Mudcrutch back together, and they released an album in 2008 called Mudcrutch. And then the album 2 is now been released in 2016. So interesting story, but sadly, I think the story is more interesting than the music on Mudcrutch 2. At its core, this is Tom Petty music, but it's not anywhere close to the quality or energy that was presented in Petty's like self-titled record or Damn the Torpedoes. This is nicely written, nicely performed, southern rock with some country tinges. Nice, safe, yawn. If you are a big Tom Petty fan, go check this out. If not, go listen to Tom Petty's earlier work before listening to this.
Life we had was just enough. You let me
now we have an album from another band that kind of broke up and now is back together.
What's with all this like getting back together?
I don't know. Just don't ever say that you break up. Just say you're stopping for a while because you never know, right? Yeah. But this one's from Thrice. To be everywhere is to be nowhere. I like that album title. I think it's really pertinent to today's connected internet culture, right? It's kind of neat. But what Thrice is doing here is they're just going back to just balls to the wall rock music. Yep. You know, we saw them experiment a lot on albums like Visu, The Alchemy Indices, and even like Beggars. Their previous album, Major Minor, I know a lot of people really liked. I wasn't as huge into it.
Yeah, we weren't as big on that one.
Yeah, but it was more a return to kind of the standard rock songwriting format, and that's what they're doing here as well. This album is really hard-hitting. The vocalist, Dustin Kinsrew, is really putting a lot of energy into his vocal performance. It's some of the heavier stuff that they've done in quite a while. In general, I thought there were some gems on here, and the performances were really good. But in general, I don't feel like these guys are really employing any of the songwriting nuances or production tactics that made their last few albums so memorable to me. You don't really get any of the atmosphere that was on Beggars, besides maybe a couple tracks. This felt a little bit safe to me, but still pretty good.
I think I liked it just a little bit more than you did, Tom, mainly because I like the presentation. They really took the intensity and cranked it up to 11 on a lot of these tracks, especially in the choruses. I love that intensity, and I liked a lot of the vocal hooks. The vocalist did just a fantastic job matching his vocal intensity with the intensity of the music, and when they're going all over the place with the intensity, that's actually a pretty tough job.
Yeah.
The two criticisms I have is that there's just a large amount of track displacement. Several of these tracks really succeeded, where several of them just weren't that good. And you know, it's other than that, it's just a little formulaic at times. That's true of every Thrice record, but here it was enough to make this not one of their better albums, but I still enjoyed it overall. Following Thrice, we have the new album from Saosin.
Saosin.
That's how you say it.
Yeah.
Saosin.
As far as I know.
Right. I'm going to learn how to say all these band names someday. I won't.
No, you won't. I'm calling you out on that one.
It's not going to happen. This album is called Along the Shadow. Put this on. I was like, man, this sounds... Am I listening to Circa Survive? Well, actually, kind of. Anthony Green, the lead guy from Circa Survive, he has rejoined Saosin and as the lead vocalist for this album, Along the Shadow. Not surprisingly, this is pretty progressive, hardcore, screamo, post-hardcore music. Kind of that emo sound that's really coming back. That we're kind of loving. And honestly, I found this album to be pretty enjoyable. There's lots of screeching guitars, blaring drums. The songs are structured in a way that plays to the band's talents, focusing on bursts of raw intensity, quickly followed by these more melodic passages. All of it is at volume 11, kind of like Thrice, and that's where this album really struggles. There just isn't a lot of dynamic contrast here, and the songs suffer from its absence. I still enjoyed this record, but it really could have been an album I loved with some tweaks in the songwriting.
I tell you what, though, I just love Anthony Green's vocals.
Yeah, he's a great
vocalist.
vocalist.
As a singer, he's fantastic. He has the ability to bring the energy and do the screaming, intense vocals without sounding like a douchebag. It's always a very unique quality, and I'm always looking forward to what he's doing next. Next, we have the new album from Pup, The Dream Is Over. This is another kind of post-hardcore emo album with a lot of spirit in the performance, a lot of energy. Another one that's pretty short, too, right around half an hour long. That's kind of a theme with this style, and I think it works pretty well for it. This is an interesting kind of story because the vocalist, since their last album that came out a couple years ago, actually had a cyst form on his vocal cords that threatened his ability to ever sing again. That's a pretty hefty thing to face as a musician. So kudos to the group for getting past that and making this album, which is really pretty damn good. And especially with the title, the dream is over. It really fits with that story that's kind of backing the whole experience. I really enjoyed this one. The vocals reminded me of kind of a less self-loathing Brand New, but the lyrics were really introspective, kind of biting, kind of fun at the same time, kind of satirical and sassy in a way that was really fun to dig into. So this is definitely one that I'd recommend if you're into that kind of sound.
No matter what I do, I can never get anything right. I just wanna be something.
Following that, we have the album The Home Inside My Head by a band called Real Friends. This is pop punk with an emphasis on the pop. Reminds me a lot of the stuff from the early 2000s, pop punk from the early 2000s, kind of like Jimmy World or All American Rejects. The choruses are huge with very catchy hooks. The guitars grind out power chords, the drums are full and very spastic. I actually like the vocals quite a bit for the style. The vocalist has a great voice. However, the vocal melodies are as predictable as the other tropes employed by artists in this genre. These guys are clearly skilled at their instruments, and I know this, and they know this style. The production simply just doesn't do them any justice. Everything sounds muddy, and the mixing leaves some of the aspects of the sound really hard to comprehend. These guys would really benefit from clean, pristine production that highlights the instrumentation. This album is one that shows a lot of potential, but there are clearly a lot of blemishes here as well.
Next up, we have Big Thief with their album Masterpiece. This one, I think, will end up being one of my favorites of the month of May. I really like this one. This is female-led, maybe indie rock with a slight kind of alt-country edge. Very soft, very delicate vocals. They're going for a really endearing and emotional experience. But the instrumentation is tight here. A lot of cool kind of tempo changes. They're doing neat stuff with the songwriting from that perspective. And it really kept my attention throughout. There's just a hell of a lot of charm here. And I really, really digged it.
Old friends, old mothers, dogs and brothers. There's only so much letting go. You can ask someone to do.
All right, to wrap this up, there was one other album that came out this month, Tom. Your album.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Dystopian Blues.
Oh, thanks for not forgetting, because I totally did.
I'm not going to forget about it. So, Tom doesn't like shameless plugs, so I'm going to do all the shameless plugs for him. A few podcasts ago, we did an artist deep dive on Tom Hummer, kind of talking about how Tom writes music, and then kind of went through did a deep dive of his personal discography. And if you guys you can go to the velocitiesofmusic.com website or tomhummer.com and listen to his albums. They're also available on Spotify. Dystopian Blues, his fourth record. It's I call it post-rock, but it's a shorter record. It's 5 tracks, very expansive long tracks. It's kind of this Dystopian Blues is the perfect album title for it. But it's kind of a sci-fi soundtrack is what you designed it as.
Pretty much. Yeah, it's kind of a soundtrack to a sci-fi movie that doesn't exist, if you will, follow some of those themes. So so the album was released on Friday, May 6th.
Yeah.
Which was the day that Radiohead announced their new album coming out 2 days later and released the single Daydream.
Tom,
and I'm like, God damn it.
I'm not going to lie, Tom.
God damn it.
I think more people are going to listen to A Moon-Shaped Pool than
that's probably true. But
your record.
I had planned that release for like weeks, and then all of a sudden Radiohead comes and they,
Yeah, so next time completely get rid of your social media presence, get rid of your website, just fade it to white.
I need to give Tom York a call and be like, hey, you're not going to pull this shit again, are you?
My name's Tom too, buddy.
Yeah, we got to band together, us Toms. I spell it with an H and everything.
It's so pretentious. That's funny. So if you have not heard any of Tom's music, go out and listen to it. It's really good. I can't say enough good things about it. And his new album, Dystopian Blues, may be his best yet. That's enough shameless plugs. Tom, favorite albums from this month besides A Moon-Shaped Pool? Can you name a couple albums that were kind of
I would definitely go with Big Thief's Masterpiece.
Nice.
I really enjoyed that one. From there, probably Marissa Nadler was one that I really liked a lot. And I'm trying to think. This month, I think for me, wasn't really like the best that we've seen this year. but there was some pretty good stuff. I think those are two that stick out to me, and I do need to come back to the new Death Grips because I'm always digging that one.
Yeah, for me, the two albums that really stuck out were Croaky Dan Michaelson. I really like that album, even though you didn't, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
And then Adia Victoria Beyond the Bloodhounds. I really liked that album. That's one I'm going to come back to. So, any stinkers?
Dude, Chance the Rapper.
Chance the Rapper was your stinker?
I could not get into that. I don't get. I'm just gonna stop there. I don't get it.
I gotta tell you, this album or this month didn't have a lot of albums that really just like made me grit my teeth and like I struggled through them. But it didn't have a lot of great albums either. This was kind of just a meh month of releases,
I'd
with
agree.
the exception of Radiohead. And I'm
monumental.
I'm not gonna lie. So Tom and I spent a considerable amount of time preparing for the Radiohead deep dive, listening to a Moonshaped Pool 20, 30 times, and then also we've been preparing for what will now be our next podcast, which is a post-rock genre deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
So we've started the month listening to several post-rock albums, in preparation for that. So we've kind of been on this like music roller coaster this month.
Yeah, we really have.
And then playing catch up the last couple of weeks for all the new albums that came out. So and a lot of stuff came out.
Yeah,
that's only going to continue throughout the rest of 2016. We're going to see just tons of albums being released every month. Really excited for the direction. Obviously, we heard a lot more rock this month, a lot more emo music was coming out, and just less of that indie electronica synth that has just dominated album releases for the last several years. Not that it's bad. I'm just getting kind of sick of it because it's diluting itself.
Yeah, I think it's time for a change.
Yeah.
Time for a shift in trends.
Yeah, I would agree with that. What were your guys' favorite records that were released in the month of May 2016? We'd love to hear any that we missed. We, at the end of every year, do a podcast. Now, we've done it once. But from now on, we're going to do a podcast at the end of the year that covers any that we do miss, that you guys, kind of reach out to us and say, hey, love to hear your thoughts on this record. So if your favorite record that was released, we didn't cover it, we'd love to hear about it. Also, any stinkers that you just didn't like, let us know. We love and appreciate your comments. So, like I said, next time, we'll have a genre deep dive on post-rock. As always, thank you guys for your continued support and participation in Velocities in Music. Tom and I love your comments on our YouTube videos, Facebook messages, and your emails. Your participation is what makes Velocities in Music possible. As always, thank you for being awesome. I'm Jake.
I'm Tom.
We are Velocities in Music, moving music discussion forward.